My name is Russ Altman. I'm on the faculty at Stanford in a number of departments, including bioengineering and genetics. They pay me. And then I have an appointment in medicine and in computer science, and I live nearby at Stanford from New York originally.
That's great. And you are one of the creator, I guess, of PharmGKB?
It's a team. I wrote the original proposal and have continued to be the principal investigator. It's now in its 13th year. We started back in 2000.
Great. And so for somebody who's just seen PharmGKB for the first time, what is it all about?
So we are totally excited about how genetics can influence your drug response. And back in 2000, the NIH and others realized that there needed to be a central repository to gather all that information together. So the mission of PharmGKB, simply put, is to understand all human genetic variation that impacts drug response, and to catalog it to make it available to researchers and eventually practitioners so that they can use it in their work. And it's a one-stop shop for the genetic influences on drug response.
That sounds like a mountain of information.
We do this in two ways. We have human curators who are experts in pharmacogenomics, and they read the literature literally every week as the journals come out. They scan them looking for genes and drugs and their relationships being discussed, and then put them on a queue for human curation. This has become difficult, and so the second effort in the lab are software tools to do this. So we do a lot of natural language processing, data mining, and stuff like that to try to help put good articles in front of the curators so that they can be more efficient. We do still want humans in the loop because this is sufficiently tricky, and the end goal being it might actually affect patients. So we're not ready to close the loop and just have computers doing it all. So there's always a human in the loop so far.
Well, who's the intended audience for this? Is this sort of opened up mainly to clinicians or science people or anyone?
It's a great question, and that has evolved. For the first 5-7 years of the database, it was specifically just for pharmacogenetic researchers, to let them know what was known and what was not known, really so that they could pick the problems to work on and not reinvent a wheel or be unaware of some important discoveries that have been made. With the success of the field, however, it has become increasingly apparent that some of this stuff is ready to roll out in clinical practice. And so we are now involved in consortia where we're actually writing clinical practice guidelines for clinicians to actually use pharmacogenomics in practice. And that's probably where we'll stop. We'll probably go all the way from the raw data all the way up to the clinical advice that you would give to a physician who's making a decision about drug prescribing.
Wow.
And that's really exciting because that's how you actually impact patients, and that's why we do this. We did this because we all believed that the genome was going to be important for health, and your response to drugs turns out to be one of the key early uses of the genome that we'll be able to benefit patients with.
So if you were an individual, just a layperson who had personal genetic information about, let's say, a gene that affects the metabolism of a certain drug, you could take your variation and go to PharmGKB, and what would you find out? So at PharmGKB, you would find a couple of things. You would find the entire literature on that drug-gene pair indexed as to how good was this, not how good was the study, but how big was the study, how compelling were the statistics when they did the analysis, and you'll find all the individual papers. But what you'll also find is products that our team has created to kind of integrate that data. So these clinical guidelines are one thing that you may find. These require a lot of evidence, so there's not as many of them as there are things for weaker evidence. There's about 12 of them where we can really put down clinical advice. But our curators also put together pathways of drug response to show what's happening in the liver or what's happening in the effector cells that are affected by all of these genetic variations. They also write summaries. This gene is important because, and they actually publish these summaries so that somebody who wants to learn about a particularly important gene. So a patient, unless they have scientific background, would not find too much. A physician would find those clinical guidelines and the supporting evidence, and a researcher would find, well, a candy land of the raw published literature, and then what we hope are very useful summaries of it to help them think about what the next research questions should be. Yeah, it sounds like a great amalgamation of the information that exists, but in a centralized place.
We call it a knowledge pyramid. In fact, if you look at the site, pharmgkb.org, please visit it. PharmGKB.org has this knowledge pyramid where we have the raw data that's published in the literature, and then we have aggregations of it, and then we have filtering of it, and then we have the clinical advice that we give to doctors. And that's really how it works. You have all this research that eventually impacts patients.
Do you keep track of how many entries you have, like how many drug genetic variation responses?
Absolutely. So I do annual reports for the NIH.
Okay.
And so over the years, we have totally instrumented the site. We know how many hits every page gets.
Wow.
We know the most popular pathways that people look at, the most popular genes.
Name one.
So people love codeine. And people,
Don't they?
Exactly, it's a pain reliever. People are very interested in warfarin. For the pathways, those are the ones they like. For the genes, they like some of the genes that are involved. There's a gene called CYP2D6, terrible name, cytochrome P450-2D6, which is very important for hundreds of drugs, and that's one of our top hits.
What other resources would you recommend? I mean, do you want PharmGKB to be sort of the one-stop shop, or are there other useful resources that you would recommend to people sort of in conjunction with this?
Absolutely. So a couple things. We have this tab-based display format right now, and one of the tabs is other resources. And it's very important because what we can do is, since we know the drug or the gene that the user is currently looking at, we can have super specific links to other information sources about those drugs, about those genes, about the diseases that they treat. And so we have those links, and we are always looking for more links, because this is the beauty of the World Wide Web, is you can make these connections. In addition to that, sometimes a data source is so valuable that we, with the permission of the people who are creating it, bring it into the PharmGKB so we can more tightly integrate that data with our data. So there's kind of two phases of the relationship. The "we'll definitely link to you" phase, and then the "we love you so much that if it's okay with you, we'd like to bring you in and make you part of our interface, part of the way we represent information." And these include basic biological databases like GenBank, which holds DNA sequence. There's a very valuable drug resource called DrugBank, which we link to. There are the dbGaP, which holds GWAS studies. And a long list of other links that you would find on this site.